Okay, now what I've got here is a picture of a ruler. And the reason I've got a picture of a ruler is because a ruler might help you here. So my first thing would be to say to you would be, if you've got a ruler, get it out and use it to help you. Okay, we're not going to be ruling lines, although if you wanted to practice ruling lines of a certain length, it wouldn't do you any harm. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to read decimal scales. Okay, and believe it or not, a ruler is a decimal scale. So if you've ever drawn a line, and I know you have because we've done that in class where you have to measure an exact amount, then you have read a decimal scale. We haven't measured with decimals, but you have read the decimal scale. Okay? So first of all, we're going to start at 1 decimal place. The whole of question 1 is 1 decimal place, and there are some of you that might feel that that's you had enough doing question 1 because question 2 is 2 decimal places. And if you want to stop after question 1, by all means do that. If you want to do the 2 questions today, that's fine. Some of you will want to do this question 2 tomorrow. That's fine. So, or you might start on question 2 and leave the trickier bits because question 2 does become quite tricky. So here we've got, let's read this. Imagine this is a ruler. It looks like a ruler. And the red arrow is pointing. Now what it says is, before deciding which number an arrow is pointing to, and that is the red arrow here, we're going to first look at the 2 whole numbers which are on either side of the arrow. So if you notice, there's a black arrow pointing at the 6 and a black arrow pointing at the 7. So the number that we're looking for is between 6 and 7. That means that it's bigger than 6, but it's smaller than 7. So it's not going to be 7 point anything, it's going to be 6 point something. Which is a little bit like time when we do time as digital. We say the hour that we've left, but not the hour that we've got to yet. So we can see that it's 5.8. Now, what you can see halfway between the 6 and the 7 is a slightly longer line. And that is actually there to help you to read the scale more easily. That is halfway, that is 6.5. So what you can actually do, start at the 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. You can actually count it like that. Lots of people do that. Okay, that is how you should be counting the scale. Don't think of using that middle one as a cheat. That's how we all read them. Okay, now here is question 1, and your job is to just write down what the arrow is pointing to. And as it goes on, it gets slightly trickier. Now, it's not very clear here on YouTube, so I'm going to suggest, of course, that you do it with the attachments to Seesaw, because you'll be able to see those much better. And if you're looking at them on screen, you can obviously make them bigger, which you can't do here. So A, let's look at A. We're going to look at this in sections because you can see that the different pictures are different ways of doing it. So if you look A, B, C, D, then H, I, J, K are all like rulers. E, F, and G are a little bit like, depending on what kind of kitchen scales you've got, you might have one like this. When you put something on top of it, the arrow moves round clockwise. And when you take it off, it goes back to 0 anti-clockwise. And then L and M are more like the kind of dials you would get in a car. So these kind of scales are everywhere. And people read them all the time. They're very useful. I can't overstate how important they are. So I'm going to do 1A in very close detail with you, and I'm going to give you more information about some of the others. So 1A, if we look where the black arrow is, it is between the 5 and the 6. Okay? And you can count those lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can see that where the 5 is, and you can see it's one before the 5. So we know that we've passed the 5, we haven't reached the 6 yet, so it's got to be 5 point something. It's just before the 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 5.4. Okay? Now, B and D, so E is exactly the same as A, but the numbers are different. B and E are slightly different because in B it doesn't give you the next number, and in D it doesn't tell you the number before. But the expectation is that you know how to count above 42. So you should be able to work out what is after 42 and what is before 3. Now, if you print this off, you can draw on it. You can actually draw where the number before and the number after 42 is and the number before 3 is. You could draw those on if you print it out. That's an advantage of, or you could actually draw it on the paper to help you. That's an advantage of not having the textbook. Now, E, F and G are, believe it or not, they're exactly the same. It's just that it's a different format. It's very, very slightly different, but the way the numbers are arranged, so in E, the arrow is between the 2 and the 3. So with that information, that should actually be enough for you to work out the answers. Now, from here on in, you can see there's a little sign that says careful here. This is where it's starting to trick you. So let's look at H. If you notice that there actually aren't 10 little lines between the 6 and the 7, there's only 5. And that is the same with I. And with J and K, there actually are only 4 lines in between. Now J's reasonable, K is very tricky. And if you can't get K, please don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Okay, if you can't get K, don't spend ages on it, leave it. And I will talk you through when I mark. Okay, I'll explain to you when I mark it. But you need to be really careful with these. So if there are only 5 lines, it means that each line is not worth 0.1, it's actually worth 0.2. Okay? And J and K with 4 lines, it's not worth, well, I'm going to leave you to see if you can work that out for yourself. J is fairly straightforward, K is the tricky one. And as I say, some of you will get that, so I don't want to give any more away. But for those of you who don't understand it, I'm asking you again, don't spend ages on it, and I'll explain how to do it when I'm marking. Okay, so L and M, the trick there is that although there are 10 lines between the two numbers, actually you can see it goes from 16 to 18, it goes from 5 to 7. So each, so there's actually 2 numbers, which means the longer line in between is not halfway, it's an actual whole number. And again, if it helps you, you can write those in. And if you can do H, then you can do L and M with a little bit more thinking. Now, if that was tricky and you don't think you can do the second question, this is the place to, I would suggest this is the place to stop. However, some of you will definitely want to carry on, so let's do that. So this is harder because we're working with 2 decimal places. Okay, so it's exactly the same idea, but it's just working with 2 decimal places. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to look at the number before the arrow and the number after the arrow. The arrow here obviously is black. The number before is 6.5. The number after is 6.6. So we're going up in hundredths. the arrow is after 6.55 because that is the longer line. It's 2 up from that, which makes it 6.57. Okay, now if you get this far and you're lost, stop here and you can let me know I'm lost now, and I'll explain it when I come to mark today's work. If you're happy, let's carry on. Okay, so it's the same thing. You are going to say what the arrow is pointing to. These ones are straightforward. Okay, so let's look at A. This is number 2, although the 2 is hidden. 2A is between 2.6 and 2.7, and it's 2 up from 2.6, so it's going to be 2.6. You know it. The rest on this page are the same. Okay, G is a bit more like a thermometer, or even if you've got a measuring jug that they've got numbers up the side like that, as opposed to along the way like a ruler, or round the way like a weighing scale. Okay, this is tricky, and again it says at the top, careful here, these are hard. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Okay, so H and I and J have got 5 lines in between. J is the one that could trip you up there. So instead of, for H, I and J, we're going up in 0.02. J, it's between 2. So you need to do a lot of thinking. K is similar to number 1K. So if you struggled with 1K, and you're going to struggle with 2K. If you got 1K, if you got it after my instructions, you'll get it here. Okay? It is tricky. Don't spend forever on it if you don't get it. And again, I'll explain it to you when I'm marking it, because I know that some of you will get it. So I don't want to give any more away. L and M, it's the same as the last time. If you notice, the arrow is between 4.6 and 4.8. And it's between 0.2 and 0.4. So L and M are a little bit trickier. K, I'm still going to say, is the hardest. Okay, if you've got any questions, get back to me. Okay.